Okay.
Hi,
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good.
Good. So, hi and happy spring to everyone. I hope everyone enjoys the nice warm weather this week. I'm Elizabeth Delarod. I'm back with our next session of the Council of the PTAs and CCSD's Joint Parent Academy. Today, I have the very distinct honor, and we're so lucky to be joined by Dr. Julie Snyder. She's the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction here at Clarkstown Central School District. I think curriculum is an area where parents tend to have a lot of questions because, we're not necessarily part and parcel to some of the nitty gritty details, but we do see everything come through our door with the kids every day. We're learning in the math workbooks alongside them with our little lessons.
Mhm.
So I'm excited to discuss this with you. I think this is something parents are genuinely curious about. So today we'll just go over some things that I think are commonly asked and wondered. We'll work our way from broad topics all the way down to some pretty specific questions that I think will help our parents navigate some of the plan changes for next year, some of the newer things that we've seen, this year, last year. So if you're ready, we jump
Yeah.
right in. Okay, great.
Yes, and I'm very, very happy to be here. And I always want to say I get very excited to talk about curriculum and instruction, and I love to talk about both and the importance of both and the relationship between both. And really, parents should always feel free to ask questions about any kind of curriculum choices, and instructional techniques. So excited to be here today.
Great. Thank you. We're thrilled to have you. We appreciate your time so much with this.
Yeah.
So if we start at the highest sort of, 30,000-foot level, can you give us an idea and some insight into what the interaction between the state Department of Education and how they set their rules and standards and benchmarks, how does that interplay work for you?
Yes. So absolutely. Yes, there are regulations. There are laws and regulations that guide a lot of what local school districts and public school districts need to do. In terms of curriculum and instruction, though, the North Star are the state's learning standards. And those can be found at the NYSED, nysed.org website, and in every content area, ELA, math, science, social studies, the arts, physical education and health, and so on and so forth. The state has outlined learning standards, and those and any curriculum that we adopt must be, by regulation, aligned with the learning standards. But alignment with learning standards is separate from the need to purchase certain curricula. The state currently does not identify you must buy this program. That is a local school district decision. But any program or curriculum that we purchase or we create our own must be aligned with the state standards.
Okay. So, and what does the oversight of that look like? Is it something you submit to the state? Is it something that
Yes. So as my role as assistant superintendent for curriculum instruction, that is part of my understanding of the job. It's like in the job description. And then there is state oversight in terms of we get audited in all sorts of ways. And then certainly if parents were to say, have concerns about the curriculum, there would have to be justification that our curriculum were is aligned with state standards, the learning standards.
okay, that's helpful. Is there a standard time frame within which the district reevaluates curriculum on a rolling basis, or is there a triggering event that would cause reevaluation?
Right, excellent question. And it's related to the first. There are certain triggering events like, And this happens quite frequently. And it is happening right now in a more significant way that the New York State Education Department rewrites standards. So it becomes, or not only rewrite standards, because the research on what kids know and are able to do shifts as, our lives change and our circumstances change. Um, and so there could be, and it's my responsibility, in addition to department chair's responsibility, to say, like, our world language standards have changed. And so therefore we must um, go in line. And so once standards change, if there is a regents exam associated with, then the instruction needs to be changed because the test at the end of the year is different. And usually the state will say, we are changing the standards and by such and such a date. So it gives districts time to learn what the new standards are, to review our curricula, to see if we need to wholesale change everything. This recently happened with science. There was a change in standards. We had to buy new curricula. Um, that is one way that signals a constant review. We are very much in touch with state education department through our BOCES, through weekly letters that I get from the state ed department about standards, learning standards. And then there could be a whole new slew of standards. So one example is we are now required to have financial literacy curricula and work. That is new based on the New York State Education Department's Portrait of a Graduate, which we in Clarkstown call Portrait of a Clarkstown Learner. So we are busy looking at curricula that is aligned with the requirements for financial literacy. In addition, it is part of board policy that every few years, I think minimally 5, if there hasn't been any changes required through the New York State Education Department, that we are constantly looking at, is our work current? Are our choices meeting the needs of our students? What are the achievement outcomes for our students in any sort of curricular program and things like that?
That's a lot. That's a lot. That's a
Yeah,
lot to
and
do at a given time.
it's really important work, and it's something that we take seriously because what we have done even 5 years ago may no longer be relevant. And so the world is changing. The biggest change that I think all of us are feeling is with AI and
Mm.
technology. And so we need to really make developmentally wise choices and shift accordingly and wisely, right? And so it's just part of the training. It's part of my training. It's part of my approach of like, this used to be appropriate, but is it antiquated? Is it old? Is it current? Is it aligned with research? Like that is extremely important to me and to us.
Yeah, and I think, just in the age of technology, the amount of, research that's being done on child development and educational standards and approaches, it really, the difference even in the like 11 years my older child has been alive is
Right.
really, it's remarkable, especially compared to, when we were young and how easily that information is accessible and disseminated. And so, I imagine it is very fast paced to keep up with
It is.
all of
And
those
one of the
changes.
things, I'm sorry, yes. With technology in particular, I'm always cautioning, the leadership team. It's going fast, and the research from a child development perspective, social emotional well-being, and even learning perspective has not caught up yet. And so if we make moves, we shouldn't just jump on the bat. Like that has been very important to us. We are still very much human-centered, developmentally appropriate, making sure the science supports it. Like, for example, there are now MRI imaging studies that are coming out that says some of the things we thought were good for learning and development with technology is actually, you know, we want to go a little bit more old school. Then there are other things that are like, oh, yes, this is incredibly helpful if you use technology in very wise and intentional ways. So it's not a black and white thing.
Yeah.
It really depends on the thing, and we're following the research, and some is really amazing and some we really need to slow down. So all of that nuance is part of our approach.
Yeah, it needs the human thought process to weigh those things out
Right.
appropriately,
And
for sure. I mean, you have to be, you know, the critical eye is still, you know, you guys.
as of right now, we
Yeah,
are very much a
yeah,
district that believes in human
yeah,
first, human thought, human critical thinking, and being very judicious with our choices based on evidence.
yeah. So in speaking to that part, how do you identify sort of appropriate new curricula when it comes time to update something? And then, how do you plan to implement it and then implement it? And, maybe this is the part where the instructional piece becomes really critical so that the
Yeah.
classroom is sort of set up for success when you have a big transition or change from one method to another.
Right. And so I know we were going to talk about this a little later, but maybe I think it's a really good example to talk about a big literacy shift that we are
Perfect.
going to be making at K-5, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So again, the questions are asked in such perfect order because everything relates to everything else. So it's our responsibility to follow the science, to follow the research, to be immersed in educational research and studies, and also to be very aligned with the regulations and the new New York State Education Department laws that are coming out through the Education Department. So one big one has been there's an education law now that all districts, and I love this law. I'm a special educator by training, and so I've known this a long time that our curricula must be aligned, our literacy curricula must be aligned with the science of reading. It's in law, it's in ed law, and it is now, and the state education department is asking districts to attest that their literacy curricula, certainly K-3, pre-K to 3, but it should be everywhere, is aligned with the science of reading, which is so. So a lot of districts in the area are making a shift, as will we in Clarkstown. We have used the units of study, which is out of Teachers College, and it was out of Lucy Calkins' work. She created this curriculum, units of study, and lots of districts in the area have been units of study, TC districts, as they call it. Lucy Calkins no longer works at Teachers College, Columbia University, but all districts are moving away from that, and they are engaging in a process to choose a new literacy curriculum that is aligned with the science of reading. I could not be more thrilled. We started this process 2 years ago, when we were using units of study for phonics in our K-2 classrooms. We quickly realized that is priority, that we needed a phonics program that was aligned with the science of reading, and we adopted our UFly program, which is in year 2 of implementation, and we are seeing very good, I mean, it's still the beginning, but we're seeing some very positive outcomes already. And teachers really are giving us incredible feedback. I've seen many, many U-Fly lessons, and it feels like we're doing right by kids. So that's the phonics portion. And the way we adopt new curricula, to your question, is again, we're immersed, myself and my team, the curriculum and instruction department, are immersed with our colleagues around the area, and there's literature out there, what are science of reading curriculum, what are the best phonics programs that are out there. I talk to my colleagues in other districts. I ask who's been doing this, who's been using this, and we have lists and lists of like all the curricula that the districts in the area, I really do Rockland and Westchester County, um, and we piloted. This was 2 years ago. I'm losing track of my years. 3 years ago. It was 3 years ago, right? Because it was my first year here. I was like, wait, we need a new phonics curriculum. And so that year we did it. We put a committee together. We did our research. We did our homework. We looked at different curriculum. We vetted it against the science of reading requirement. We had reading experts and literacy experts in the room. And then we had our teachers try out two different programs. And then we landed on UFly, and we've been happy about that. This year, we've spent the entire year in a multi-state literacy committee, which it's like 35 of us. We have we have two consultants, we have our instructional coaches. I am there. We have three principals, special educators, general educators, reading specialists, ENL teachers, and we did the same thing. We started with having our consultants research what are the tried and true evidence-based literacy curricula that are aligned with the science of reading. We looked at five, we narrowed it down to three and then two, and we have piloting this in every grade, not every teacher, we're too big to do that. Where we're piloting two curricula, and we are making a decision by June and starting next year in a K-5 new literacy curriculum for reading comprehension, oral comprehension, writing, and vocabulary development. We're staying with UFly K2, and then the reading comprehension piece and the writing piece, as I said, and the vocabulary, oral comprehension and speaking will be in a new curriculum K-5 next year.
I think that's really exciting because I have, a sixth grader and I have a first grader. And so, I had one that learned to read with the sort of, older
Right.
triangulation type method. And now I have one that's done UFly the last couple of years. And it's, the difference in just, I would say, the rapidity with which my younger one has probably learned words. I mean, my older one was also like a pandemic kid, but still,
Right.
just the smoothness of that process, how easily I see her able to decode and read words that are maybe, not sort of uniform words. And it's been really remarkable with her. Yeah.
I'm really glad.
I think, all of that effort, pays off because it is not easy to keep up with best practices when it comes to that kind of stuff. It's
Right.
hard, it's kids, it's little kids.
Right.
So that's exciting. So hopefully everybody will be excited to hear that.
Yes. And then, so next year is going to be our first year of implementation. And then next year, we're also going to simultaneously, because it's really the literacy work is a KA experience. I mean, and then by high school, we're really talking about English and literature and nonfiction. And, it's so important to intervene and instruct correctly um, at the youngest ages, right? Because we want to make sure that because the brain becomes a little bit less plastic and elastic and all that. So then next year we'll also be beginning the similar types of work at the middle school in English and ELA. And I also, in terms of moving towards the science of reading. You also asked a question about the relationship between instruction, right? So I am a person who believes that it is always about the teacher in the classroom. So yes, it's really important to have a curricula that is aligned with research, aligned with science. There are better and worse resources, tools, programs out there, but it's always going to be about the teacher in the classroom and the ability for the teacher to implement the curriculum. So we are very excited that we have and we're developing we have three instructional coaches who support teachers in their practice. We have principals who are instructional leaders. We have department chairs, we have a mentoring program, we have an induction program, because the curriculum is the what am I teaching? And the instruction is how am I teaching? So really, when we get a new curriculum, it's very important that we support our teachers in the implementation of that.
I think you're exactly right.
Right.
Without the support, it's difficult. And in a large district, you have a lot of teachers. And when you're
Right.
rolling it out, district wide, that's an important piece. It's a piece that,
Right. Right. So
really,
we have to make choices, and there's only so much time
yeah,
in a day, right?
yeah,
So it is the reality that sometimes we need to train and support teachers during the workday. We do it outside and but like at some release time, and that's really important for our first year of implementation. If we've got to support and train our teachers, but that might mean a kid might come home and say, "Oh, I had a sub." Just know in first year of implementation, it's that balance. We don't
yeah,
want teachers out of the classroom, and we need to make sure that we are teaching them how to implement a new curriculum, because this is a big shift, especially for elementary teachers where we're reading teachers, right? And we sort of changing the rules on, because it's a very different type of teaching than the units of study. So so it's really exciting, and it's a big lift.
yeah, yeah. All right. So I think it's great to know that the teachers are supported in that way and that there's so much programming around that because, that's, for us, like, teachers they're such an important part of our village. And,
They're everything.
year in and year out, like, they know everything about our kids and they take care of our kids. And, they are all so excited to see our kids succeed. And, the support for them is hugely important because, we want the same thing for them. We want them to
Right.
be
I mean,
happy and successful and feel like, they're succeeding with the kids because, when everybody's kind of learning together, that's it's big. So that's great. I think that's a great point. That is not something that, parents would necessarily hear much about simply because that's internal and not something that pertains to us, even though it does. So I'm glad that we got a chance to sort of
yeah, and I really need to say, and I do say
make
this
that
a lot.
clarification.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
No,
Um, I I say this a lot. The most important adult in a school district is the teacher in the classroom.
yeah,
It's the teacher in the classroom. The teachers in the classroom are the most important in-school factor for student achievement. It's not someone like me. The second most important is the principal. But so it's really, really important that we support our teachers, because they're where it's at.
yeah,
They're where it's at.
yeah, agreed. That's great. So, like on that note, if it works for you, let's talk like some specific things, some sort of more specific questions that we were able to field, or things that we kind of hear out in the wild that we
Sure.
know people chatter about and wonder. So, when it comes to things like languages, so something that is maybe has a more elective quality to it, right? How do you decide what the district will offer? And how do you decide, like, I know there's going to be a change for next year where the sixth grade is not going to
Yep.
have language. So, how do you make decisions like that?
Sure. Absolutely. Well, it's interesting. So this is my third year in Clarkstown, and when I came here, I was impressed by the breadth of our world language offerings. Um, we have, like most districts, we have Spanish, French, and Italian, but we also have Japanese. We have Latin in one of our high schools, and we have American Sign Language. And there is a real commitment here to keep those languages and those language offerings. So there is not an intention to change that. I will share, it's getting increasingly difficult. There are some in education, there are some teachers that are more difficult to hire than other teachers. It's very hard to find world language teachers, even in Spanish and French and Italian. And so it's particularly difficult to find world language teachers in Japanese, but we're okay. And it's also the certification for ASL is also very rigorous, and that has been difficult to find as well. But we are committed to making sure and we're doing all sorts of interesting and I think outside of the box recruiting efforts. So there is a commitment to that. The sixth grade phenomenon is so I don't know exactly how many years it was, but in sixth grade, the way it was always done was it was 2 out of the 6 day cycle, and as opposed to every day. And then in seventh grade and eight, it's every day, every day. What the research indicated was that our kids weren't really learning enough in a 2 day experience. So learning a language as you know, really requires immersion, it requires repetition. And so it was more of a taste, but it wasn't having the student outcomes that we wanted. So kids were starting in seventh grade as if it was like their first introduction. If that makes sense? Um, so there was a discussion. The other thing is, again, this is my third year. The Falcon Foundations program is the only of its kind in this area. So this is my 28th year in education. I've worked in 3 different districts in Westchester, K-12 positions. And the Falcon Foundation sort of orientation transitional program is the only of its kind. And I think the benefits of that program, which is being tweaked and revised a little bit for next year, which again is aligned with our goals, state learning standards, that's where shifts need to happen, I think is a really exciting one. So we made a judgment instead of the 2 day at a 6 day exposure where we weren't getting really language fluency, we are reimagining Falcon Foundations to have more concentrated expertise, particularly around STEM, AI literacy, digital fluency and computer science standards, robotics, STEM. We are also going to have a global connections program through our consultation with One World United, where all sixth graders are going to have well, not pen pal. I'm aging myself.
No, I love that
Virtual,
idea. I had a pen pal when I was young,
right,
and I think that
right.
sounds
So
really
like,
fun.
it's
Yeah,
all virtual and
yeah,
Zoom. We're going to be
yeah.
Zooming with people,
I
with
know.
kids their ages around
Yeah.
the world. And so that is a global experience, which I think what the world language piece was, it was a global experience, but it was a dipstick in terms of language formation. Uh, uh, I think that's where this came from.
Yeah, I think Falcon Foundations is really unique and helpful. My sixth grader is my oldest child, so we're all learning together.
Yeah,
It's we say all the time, like, well, you've never been in sixth grade, I've never been a sixth grade parent, so we sometimes just roll as it goes, and I think Falcon Foundations has been hugely helpful for her. Not only is it she gets to spend some extra time with her teachers and they do cool projects and they're learning financial literacy and they're learning internet safety. And,
right,
these are all things that come at parents also very quickly at this age. And the kids level up so much, I would say, from, elementary to middle school.
right,
So it's really helpful to have that pillar there, knowing that the kids are, learning about keeping themselves safe, keeping their community safe, and having a class where it doesn't feel like there's a lot of pressures in terms of tests and things like that. And I
absolutely.
think having that built into their day is really great, and it really does help the kids transition into middle school, like, because it is very different than elementary life, and I think it's
Right.
a lot tougher in ways you maybe don't expect, than maybe it was when we transitioned, because we were very used to having set grades and numeric grades. Everything is sort of like that. So I feel like that has been really superb programming at that level for those kids. And I think that's a good change. Because
That's good.
I
And
think
we're,
the
yeah,
world language program here is amazing. I can't imagine as a child having had access to Italian or Japanese or French or I mean the school I went to, the music teacher taught us Spanish once every other week and instead of music. And so, we have like come such a long way. And I'm so thankful that my children have access to like something that I think is so amazing.
yeah,
But yeah, 2 days a week is tough. I was a language major in college and you didn't get out unless you were immersion. I mean, you had to
right.
go. So I think that is well-founded language sort of science, the science of how you learn a language an older person when it's not, native
Absolutely.
to what
And
you're learning. You don't just learn it organically like that. So I think it's a good change. And I think the kids take that a little more seriously too when they're in the classroom day in and day out. It
day in
doesn't
and day
feel
out.
so elective. It feels more like a really important part of just a holistic curriculum,
Right.
you
And
know?
very much, I believe a world language is like a fifth academic, right? And
Yeah.
so let's do
Yeah.
it right, though, right? Let's
Yeah.
make sure we're doing it right. The other thing and to your point, and I'm glad your daughter is having a good experience with Falcon Foundations. Have a child development background, so that age, the 5 to 6, is a very sort of big transition from an adolescent development perspective. And so it's also an opportunity, like the STEM rotation and the instructional technology and AI and social media use. And like this is something that is incredibly important for this age of students where we really need to educate our kids. And we're starting to do this at the elementary level as well, which is like, what is real? What is not? What is
Yeah.
vulnerable? How does this affect your mood? Like the impact of social media and
Yeah.
AI and safety. And this is a perfect opportunity for us to teach into it in a very safe, non-threatening, supervised way.
Yeah. With
And
people that they like and trust. And
right.
teachers are certainly hearing more of the sort of, what's going on the ground. Sometimes, by the time it gets to us, it's because there was a negative experience with something or another parent reaches out or it's at a place where it's not as easy, I think, to head some things off at the pass. And the school district is able to incorporate experts who do these things and access those resources in ways that individual parents might not necessarily.
Right.
I think they had Clarkstown police come talk to the kids about internet safety and
Yes,
what information not to give to a
that's
stranger. Like,
right.
and that's, they see those things because people say this can't be happening in sixth grade, but it is.
But it's
And
happening.
yeah, I think, it's just hugely important. So I think that's a positive change, even though it sounds like maybe, you know, oh, we're getting rid of language. We're not getting rid of it. We're doing it in favor of this, and we're strengthening the language in another
Right.
way. And so refocusing our energy, and
Right. And
that's a good thing.
yes, and we're redesigning it so that there are expert teachers, right? So, Dr. Mike St. John, it used to be that all sixth grade teachers taught a course. Given the work that we feel, again, changing of the standards, changing of the reality of our of kids' lives right now, each teacher is going to be the expert in financial literacy, in journalism, in
Yeah,
civics and community service, in the STEM and AI and instructional technology and social media, and then an expert in the global connections. So we're concentrating the expertise and shifting along with the standards and along with what 11-year-olds really need.
yeah, I think that's great. I think it's a real boon for this district to have that program. It's good for the kids. So, like, in speaking about things that are sort of, happen maybe not as consistently in the classroom, I think sometimes there's curiosity about how the math and social studies is scheduled at the elementary level. Because, like, I know my little one will come home and she'll say, oh, we did science today, or, that it's kind of like a little special event, even though I know they do it on
Yeah.
a consistent basis. How does the scheduling of that sort of work in with, obviously ELA and math are daily occurrences and, they have their specials and whatnot. Is there sort of district programming that's recommended? Is that part of like the
Yes.
curriculum
Yes, it's
programming?
totally. Yep, 1,000%. So this also is the first year of a new 6-day cycle schedule at the elementary level. That was a big shift, I think, really for the positive that we engaged in last year, and this is the first year. So instead of Monday through Friday, we have day one, day two, day three, day four, day five, day six. And part of that work was to open up the schedule a little bit and also protect instructional time. And so part of, unlike at the secondary level where your periods are, 40 minutes or 45 minutes, and an elementary program, and we worked with a world-renowned scheduling consultant, your minutes of instruction are always best practice indicates more time for ELA. So we as a district have identified instructional minutes for every content area subject. I actually can reshare this Board of Ed presentation that I and my colleagues put on last year that outlines like ELA is 105 minutes or something. I can't remember all the math, but K2, and then it's an hour and a half, 3, 5. So what we call, and math is an hour across the board. Um, we call social studies and science content. And in most elementary schools, in every elementary school that I've ever worked in, social studies and science alternate. So you do a unit of science, and then you do a unit of social studies, and then a unit of science, and then a unit of social studies. And it is embedded, there's 45 minutes for that, particularly in upper grades. Now, again, your science folks and your historians feel upset about that, and I understand why. We do in education and probably all places, right? We have to make choices and we have to prioritize certain skills and certain subject areas at different developmental ages. The new literacy curricula and its alignment with science of reading is what's called a knowledge building curriculum. So it goes deep into learning about not only what ELA skills, but also content areas. So for example, in our first pilot, there was an entire fourth grade unit on the heart, a heart as a literal organ. So there was tons of deep dives in the circulatory system and reading of texts, nonfiction text, about literally vessels and aorta and chambers and all that science. And then there was heart as metaphor, heart as figuratively, heart as feelings, and that's where you get your literature. So, and this idea is when you build up knowledge and schema around a particular topic, it absolutely helps your ability to read critically. What the research indicates, if you know a lot about a lot of things, you will be a more critical reader. So we're excited that because we all feel like we don't have enough time with science and we don't have enough time with social studies, it increasingly will be embedded in ELA because it's knowledge building curricula.
Yeah, which makes sense. I mean, you have things that cross over, obviously, things like writing, things like, yeah, like reading skills and, reading more difficult, scientific reading is a totally different type of skill set than, reading
It totally
legalese
is.
than is reading, and that's, helping kids be fluent in that to the level that they could pick up, something and read it critically themselves is great. I mean, I think that's so exciting. Like I'm such a nerd about reading and like
I know.
being, having just sort of like a wide lens on things like that. Like I don't know, you could just there's so much that you could read that's
The kids were so excited.
fascinating.
They like went home and they
Yeah,
like knew more vocabulary, scientific vocabulary than
yeah.
like the parents. And
Their parents are
um,
probably like, "What show did you hear this?"
I know, I know it's so funny. The other thing is more and more, which is a good thing again. The standards, I keep going back to that, the learning standards and our tests, so that the fifth grade science test is, people would say it's much more like a reading exam and a writing
Yeah.
exam and a critical thinking exam than a rote knowledge. Like
Yes.
gone are the days of you just need to know a lot of stuff, like factual knowledge. That's not what's of 2026, right?
Yeah.
We can ask Google to give me all the knowledge I know. It's the what you do with knowledge. How do you critically read a text? How do you interpret graphs? Do you have the vocabulary? Do you understand? Right? So there's a shift in education right now that everything really needs to be higher level.
Yeah, yeah, it's the hows of how you get there. The science test, it's funny that came up at the dinner table last night because my sixth grader just did her ELA
Yes,
standardized testing yesterday, and the science test was it's a tough test, and
it was a tough time.
I think it'll be just a benchmark that lives in her brain forever. And it's there was a passage in particular about how chipmunks hear or had something like that, and she's like, it was such specific information, and I don't remember learning about and we laughed because then we had a good discussion about how it's about, can you take any piece of scientific information that's put
You
in front
got
of
it.
you, and can you pull the right information out of it when they go to ask you the questions? And that is the learning piece of it. That is how we get the A to B, so that we can critically evaluate everything that we're reading. So I think that's great. I think that's amazing. I'm so
Right,
excited to hear
right,
that we're going to do that.
right.
So as we sort of wind down here, I have a couple of hyper specific questions.
Yes.
Um, One is, can you speak a little bit to the math and science pathways at the middle school? Because they work a little differently than they do well, not a little differently, very differently than in
Very differently.
elementary. And I
Yeah.
think there's some curiosity there. And then our last topic is high school specific. And I think there's a lot of questions around it. So we'll do that one
Okay.
last.
Great. Okay. So yes, we at Felix Vesta Middle School, we use terms like accelerated and enrichment, but for the sake of this discussion, I'm going to use the term honors, right? So we have our regular level classes and then we have honors options, which depending on the subject, and we can go into the weeds individually, like if parents have questions, but they use words like accelerated enrichment as opposed to honors, but in some cases. So in sixth grade, we have a regular sixth grade program. I think it was in 2009 was the last time, or even earlier than then, where there was a honors sixth grade or accelerated sixth grade math class. So the sixth grade curriculum, which is a heterogeneous curriculum for all sixth graders during that transition year, we have changed our math curricula to Eureka Math Squared. And so, again, all the new curricula is, I would say, it teaches up as a philosophy and it really challenges kids in a way that is more aligned with innovative teaching practices and less traditional skill-based rote, similar to the science exam, right? It's not about what you know, it's about how you think about things. So that program has been in place since I think 2009. Then it's seventh grade that is a turning point in all of the subjects where there is an honors option. Again, they might call it accelerated or enrichment, really probably enrichment in seventh grade for all the subjects. So you can either be in regular English or honors English um, and that's across the board. In eighth grade, for you have regular and honors options in math. It's either you're taking math 8 or you're taking algebra honors, which is a ninth grade course with a ninth grade regents exam. In science, you're either taking science 8 or you're taking the honors option, which is earth science, which is an honors course and it's a regents course. It ends in a regents and it's a ninth grade credit. In social studies, you're either taking eighth grade social studies, which is the second half of US history, or you're miss the second half of US history if you want to take global history 9 honors, which is a high school course with a Regents at the end. And in English, you can take English 8, you can take English 8 honors, or you can also take the English 9 class, which is a high school course and an honors course that does not end in a Regents, and neither does global.
Okay, that's
So
that's
hope,
helpful because I think it's different, and for parents, being able to assess that, like just starting at knowing what the difference is and kind of what it means and what's
yeah,
best for your child. Because there is a waiver process, even if teachers provide you a recommendation. And so there is parental involvement in some of those things if you'd like for there to be. Um,
absolutely. Parents can
but it's
weigh in. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's everybody wants to do the best thing for their child, of course, and
absolutely.
so it's there's a little bit of untangling of like, what are we doing here that's different or what, so
And
that's
I do
good.
want to bring that up. I think that's
Yeah,
a good
that's
point.
helpful to know. Yeah.
We have our waiver process is certainly teachers make recommendations that they think are right for kids. But if parents or kids want to give it the honors option a shot, that is certainly within their right. We are working hard to increase our Algebra 1 participation in particular. Um, and that is absolutely, our open door philosophy that if kids want to give it a shot, they certainly can.
Yeah. So I think, kids are taking regents, and then once they jump to ninth grade, then they're kind of just, I don't know, they're rolling right along with the high school curriculum because they kind of started there. So there's no gaps. They're not missing anything there.
No gaps.
That's, it's a, it's a direct jump from 8 to
It's a
9
direct jump.
when they're involved.
Yes,
Yes, when they're enrolled in those classes to begin with in 8th grade.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. There are no gaps except the second half of American history. I have to say, on behalf of our
Yeah.
social studies teachers,
I'm sure they appreciate that. Then yes, you would miss that element of it. Yeah.
yes, I mean,
Yeah.
you certainly are going to take a push, or US history in high
Yeah.
school, probably. So
Yeah.
you'll make it up. But, on behalf of our social studies teachers, we believe in the second portion of US history in eighth grade.
Yeah. The more the better.
Yeah.
All right. So my last question is about the AP classes and the new drop rotation block scheduling. I
Yes.
think, because Northeastern schools start, I don't know, what feels almost like later and later, even though we start at a similar time. I feel like Southeastern schools, start very early. And that's always, I think, probably a concern as to, the AP tests are scheduled when they're scheduled. How do you make sure that the kids have the appropriate amount of instructional time? How do we make sure that the kids are not, missing coursework?
Yep.
So if you could speak to that a little bit, I'm sure that there's some apprehension among parents about, staring that down and
Yeah.
making sure that their kids are positioned competitively and in the best place that they can be, even with a later jump on the material.
Yeah. So a few things. I first want to say, how I referenced that I am very much involved with my colleagues across particularly Rockland and Westchester County. And I was just at a assistant superintendent meeting where everyone is saying, okay, we're going to a drop rotation schedule. We're going to a drop rotation schedule because again, the way education is now, it is really depth over breadth. We need to go deep. We need our brains to be working in like very analytical, innovative ways. Gone are the days where it's like, go home. I mean, right now, like there's really a push for in-class reading and writing and thinking because we can outsource it to AI. So this idea of let's go deep is really the way of the future. Um, and so everyone's doing it. I mean, we don't do things because everyone is doing it, but when districts in this area are all moving towards something, then it's like what's the research behind this, and let's be really thoughtful about it. Um, in terms of science in particular, so yes, we start a little later than Southern schools, but there isn't, and again, I learned this through with our international consultant on scheduling. it's a Northeast phenomenon, and certainly New York, that they require way more minutes in science in labs in particular, than other districts around the country. So we over service our students with labs in science in particular. So we won't feel that loss in science, even if we feel a loss at all, but it's particularly not a thing in science. Um, I am not concerned about, since so many districts have done this and still have incredible outcomes and sending their kids to the best universities in the world. I understand the concern, but that hasn't been the reality of school districts that have this. The other thing is, when you have longer blocks, and it's not that big of a change from what we have, like there are some districts that go to 80 minutes as opposed to, like, we're just going to 55, right? But when you have longer stretches of uninterrupted time, you're actually recouping minutes too. When you're switching classes more frequently, it takes 2 to 3 minutes to get settled. Your brain is like has to switch sets, right? So if you just do it mathematical calculation, sure, there are fewer minutes. But the quality of those minutes, I think you have to take that into consideration. We also have worked with our teachers to redesign lessons, right? So it can't just be like you have to fit it. It won't work for kids or for teachers if you take like a lesson and a half and you just add it on. It's the whole lesson design that we're teaching differently, and having 10 more minutes will allow that different teaching to go deep, as opposed to, it's really deep depth over breadth. And there
Yeah.
has been no evidence that any of these very high achieving high schools that have these schedules are behind in any way.
Yeah, I think, and block scheduling is not a new phenomenon. I think,
No,
like I think when I was in high school, we did A days and B days. So we had 4 classes and 4 classes. So it was an hour and a half in each class. And
right,
then at some point we switched over to a 4 by 4 schedule. So it was supposed to be a college experience. I don't know if that's,
right, right.
but it was 4 classes and 4 classes. So it was the same sort of issue. If you ended up with, an AP class in the spring, how do you make sure that you get there? I mean, if it's any comfort, I got a 5 on my AP US history exam. So there you go.
There you
And
go.
like
Right.
25 years ago, we're,
Yeah. Again,
it was fine. It worked fine. But I think that's a good thing. Quality is certainly quality, the quality of the time, the less time switching classes, all minutes are not created equal. So, you're carrying around less things. Your brain just might be filled with less information. Not that that's a scientific thought at all, but, I do think that's an important way to think about a change like that it's giving
I
kids
think that that was
more
perfectly said,
time.
right? Because
Yeah.
the other design of our schedule is that you don't always have the class at the same time. And I think that is also interesting when you think about brain research as well, right? So like all minutes aren't created equal, and all
Yeah.
minutes during the time of day might not be created equal. So it's, again, it's like it's not the number of minutes, it's the quality and the ability to have uninterrupted long depths of learning experiences that are taught in this way that we really need to shift in terms of our teaching practices. And again, going back to the instruction, we have run professional learning experiences throughout the year that support teachers in teaching in extended learning opportunities, that support teachers. We just finished what we call a design thinking workshop, where it really is teaching kids how to really think critically, really wonder about things, really provide evidence, really, and it's like a whole different way that we're trying to support teachers to teach, given that it's not, there's a shift happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's good. I think that's a good way to keep up with changes. And even though it's different than, those are certainly real, apprehensions about, making sure that everybody's as competitive as they can be, because that's in the
Absolutely.
district's interest as well, to making sure that the kids have what they need and that the teachers feel supported. So, hopefully it's a positive change. Everybody, settles in easily to that difference, and it'll feel like sort of less is more when less, downtime in the in between
Yeah.
is having a net positive benefit for everybody when it comes to that.
Yeah, and I think the decision was, it's interesting. I mean, certainly whenever there's a change, and especially if people, it wasn't their own experiences, it's hard to know what one doesn't know,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so that's totally human nature and understandable. The decision was made because it was a way to ensure that we kept competitive.
yeah,
Right? Like
yeah,
gone are the days of the factory model. This idea also of everyone having a lunch together is really exciting. There's districts who have done that. There are learning opportunities there. Their kids are happier because they're having lunch with their friends. I think there will be less frenet. I anticipate, based on tons of research and discussion with others, my colleagues in other districts, that there will be a less freneticism, that the kids, our attendance should really improve because kids won't always be missing the first,
yeah,
and the depth of learning over time really should increase.
yeah. It should build. That's great. That's an exciting change. So that's a good thing. And yeah, everybody starts to shift, and if it's based on sound research, it's also nice to have people, concrete examples in nearby areas that you can look to say this was successful, and here's something I can point you to that might help, because it is an abstract sort of thought. How does this work, right? So that's good. That's great.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
I'm very particular as to which districts I go to in terms of, you know,
Yeah.
right.
What's
So
yeah, where we're looking for similarities, examples,
right.
which which comparisons, which, similarly situated geographical areas, just distance to get to school. There's a lot of factors that aren't academic, that affect, what
Absolutely.
are we, how do they start their school day at the same time? Like there's just a lot of things
A
that go
lot.
into, how kids react to certain stuff. So yeah, I would say it makes all the sense that there are certain examples that are more applicable for us than
Absolutely. And
elsewhere. So,
none of this is something that we take lightly. Like, this is high
yeah,
stakes. These are our kids. This is their
yeah,
education. So all decisions are heavily researched, heavily vetted, and very intentional.
yeah, yeah. Listen, this has been the best. Like I could keep talking all
I
afternoon.
know, it's
I
fun.
know it's really nice. You're just the loveliest, and I think, we're super appreciative for, your time and your expertise and your knowledge and your willingness to sort of share, everything that goes on at your desk with us. As parents, it's nice to kind of look behind the veil sometimes, and just kind of get a peek into what, into what drives some of these things, like,
Absolutely.
when we're doing the little math homework later and I'm doing my
Yeah.
parent page, and so that's great. And this has been fantastic. Thank you so
Wonderful.
much.
And we want to hear from you too. Like, that's important to us. We care about the parent experience. We know you want to, this is a wonderful community where you want to support our kids. So part of the literacy curriculum has been like, what is the parent experience? We want the feedback. And we can do more of these, and people should really feel free to call their principals or call me, whatever, or email me, whatever works. We want I could talk about this all day, right?
Yeah.
So,
Send me more questions so I can do
yes,
more interviews with Julie.
right, there
Please.
you go. I mean, there's
You're
no
so much
hesitation. I
fun.
mean, yeah, so,
Yeah. That's great. Thank you for that. It's nice
yeah,
to feel like the door is open to
the
come and ask
door
a
is
question,
open.
because, sometimes it's almost like, I don't know, is this something I should know already? Is this, where do I even find this answer? And
Right.
so, that's part of the Parent Academy as it is, right? It's how do
Yes.
we sort of help, you know, make everybody feel, like we really are all on the same team,
We're
because we
all
really
in this
are,
together. Dr. Bayako
Yeah.
also is the door is open, and I am as well. We mean it when we say it, and we are in this together. Nothing more important than children. So,
That's it.
anytime.
All right. Thank you so much. This was
Okay.
amazing. Thanks. Have a
Thank
great
you so
day.
much.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.